Call to order the City Council work session for City of East Grand Forks, Tuesday, August 22nd, 2017. It's now 5 o'clock. Will the City Clerk please call roll?
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olson.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Fetter.
Here.
Mike Paxtonski.
Here.
Tim Riappel.
Here.
Henry Tweeden.
Here.
Mark Marks.
Present.
Does turn quorum. Number one, briefing on Metropolitan Planning Organization public meeting. Mr. Haugen.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. Earl Haugen with the Grand Forks, East Grand Forks Metropolitan Planning Organization. We are in the beginning stages of updating the street and highway plan for our metropolitan area. Just to kind of recap, currently the city adopts that transportation plan as part of its city's comprehensive plan. Our transportation plan is comprised of three elements. The transit element you approved earlier this year, the bike and ped element we are currently working on, and then the street and highway element that we're just starting the engagement process on. Our first real public opportunity for comment is happening next week. Included in your packet that was mailed out to you was invite. This is just a recap that it's next Wednesday evening at the Empire Arts Theater in downtown Grand Forks. What we do with the street and highway plan, as we do with all of our transportation plan elements, is establish the visions, identify what issues and existing conditions that we should try to fix. We do alternatives to show how we can make improvements to the network. We put together a financial plan to show how we can afford what it is that we're trying to achieve. And we also then work on identifying what the priorities are that we're working towards. A couple of differences from your current transportation plan that will be going on with this transportation plan. The current one, the focus was really on this notion of state of good repair. Fix kind of what exists before you start building new and expanding. One of the issues with that, they really didn't have a definition of what state of good repair really was. So with that, Congress passed the FAST Act, and in the FAST Act, they really are pushing forward the performance-based planning and programming process. And with that performance they're identifying metrics that tell us how we're going to measure what state of good repair is and how we're measuring how we're going to achieve what we're trying to achieve in our network. For example, with those measures, we identify a specific target that we're trying to achieve. And so in the bottom here, I have examples of X% of pavement in poor condition. So at some point, working with you, the citizens, the states, and the feds, will identify whatever that X percentage is. Just to throw out a hypothetical number, say we're willing to accept 10% of our pavements to be in poor condition. If we find out that our pavements are 20% in poor condition, then we're going to put resources into achieving that target. If we find out that our pavement is in 5% poor condition right now, that means we have more ability to spend on the other targets that we'll be identifying, such as safety and reliability and so on. Bridge is another area where, for an example of what a state of good repair is, we'll identify X% of our bridge. It's actually parts of the bridges that are separated out, but anyway, again, a poor condition is identified. With some of these targets, if we don't achieve the target or making progress towards the target that we identify, there are some financial ramifications from the federal point of view, and that is that we have to shift some money that we might have in other targeted areas towards these targets, particularly the ones that deal with pavement condition, bridge condition, and safety. Another big difference between this go-around and the last go-around for the city of East Grand Forks is the actual federal sub-target that is allocated to the city every fourth year. In our current document, we were estimating starting out at $560,000 every fourth year being available. Well, just now in 2018, you're going to receive $850,000, so a 50% increase in federal funds from what our current plan was suggesting or forecasting you would get. And because it inflates at a small rate of growth, our current plan, we weren't going to reach that $850,000 value until the very end of the life of that plan. Now we're starting out at the 2040 timeframe with every fourth year federal funding that's cycled through East Grand Forks. So a significant sort of the dollar values in the current transportation plan for East Grand Forks were at such a level that it was difficult to identify any real specific project every fourth year. With this dollar value being that much higher, and also with targets and other things, we will, I'm almost 100% sure that we'll be identifying a specific project every fourth year to spend those funds on in East Grand Forks. And what those projects are is how we'll work through the process to identify and prioritize. To start out with, we're not new. There's been Metropolitan transportation plans in Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, covering both communities since the 60s. There are several issues that are still remaining that were identified back then that we're still wrestling with trying to identify, and every time there's some new issues. So we do have a map that gives us a starting point, perhaps to spark people's interest in identifying what issues we may be missing on it. Our public engagement starts in earnest next week, but throughout this year and most of all of next year, we'll be engaging in that process. You can see all of the dates, months that we have targeted for further public engagement. Towards the end in the fall, because we have been partnering with the two cities, we go through each city planning commission and each city council for consideration of adopting the transportation plan as part of their city comprehensive plan. So you will, before we wrap this up, you will have 2 months of opportunity to digest into the meat and bones of that document to make sure it's appropriate for what you want to adopt as part of your city planning document. Besides coming next Wednesday, there are other ways to be involved. We do have a website available specifically for this project. And also, you can also contact your 2 MPO board members, which are Mr. Vetter and Mr. Demers, or you can contact myself. And this is just the invite that was provided in your packet. That's all I really have.
Do they have any questions for Mr. Haugen? Mr. DeMern?
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess this isn't maybe specifically germane to this public meeting, but was wondering if, I don't want to catch you off guard, but was wondering if Mr. Haugen would please describe to the council and staff about the new MnDOT grant program, maybe kind of what some of the deadlines are, some of the current criteria and stuff, so people may start thinking about ways we could possibly spend money.
If I'm understanding, it is kind of separate from this process. MnDOT, the state legislature provided funds for local road improvements. I did send out the notice that I received to your staff and your board, MPO board members, that there is an open solicitation. I think the deadline is November to have them submitted into the state for consideration. And I guess I'd have to defer to the website for more details on that. But there is an active open solicitation of Minnesota state funds to do local road improvements in your city.
For 18.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's $26 million pot or
Yes, it's not a huge pot statewide available, but if you have $1 million project that you're looking to fund, it might be competitive. I can think of a few, and I've suggested them to a few of your board members.
Anyone else have anything? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Move on to number 2, discussion on attorney review of project contracts. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. I just want to get the feeling from the council before I really move forward with this, if there's any issue with potentially doing some amendments to our contracts that we use with our contractors and engineers, and that when we work on larger projects. One thing that we have found here with the pool project and working with Mr. Strawman from Canadian Graven on that, he does have some recommendations that he suggests for our AIA documents 201 and 201 and 101, particularly in areas on waivers of subrogation and items 15 for the claims and disputes. One in particular is with the engineers or the architects. Under this current document, we are only entitled to recover any monies that we have paid to the particular contract, to the architects or engineers. Typically, he likes to put that to any damages that may have occurred due to those actions. And the other one he likes to do is stiffening up what is required for mediation and bringing people to the table and those type of things. So I guess what I just wanted to see is if there was any comments, concerns, or questions about the council on that before I would discuss them and bring a recommendation forward for future projects.
Are you talking Mr. Gulstead or the other third party?
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Strawman from Canadian Graven, the construction attorney.
And I would say I don't have any objection to that. I will point out that on a number of occasions regarding these standard contracts with the AA documents and the waivers and subrogation clauses, I've brought up that specific fact that the subrogation clauses and the recovery mechanisms are against the city under most of them because they're standard contracts, and whether or not you want to try to negotiate a different contract with them. If you're going to do that, a lot of times, one, you're either going to have a standard policy that says this is what we're going to accept, so they know it up front, or you're going to have to give lead time for further negotiations, because most of the time these contracts come forth and you're asking for them to be approved, and it needs to be done today because tomorrow they want to start. So whether you have Kennedy and Graven do it or me or anybody else, those are the types of decisions that have to be made. It's not something that's brand new. This is something we've been fighting forever in these standard contracts, and whether or not you're willing to let them or modify them.
Is something that we could have during information on the bid process in there of saying this is our standard way of doing things?
Well, you could, but the contract itself, yes, but you would actually submit that part of the document ahead of time. For instance, most of these documents have standard language, and unless you modify them, they're always going to be in favor of the contract.
David?
I could address that too. That was one of the items that Mr. Strawman did raise on that, is typically then when you go out and put the bids out for these type of projects, these construction projects, what he recommends, or has the cities that he has worked with on these do, is even make a note on it that some of the language in the contract is changed, and that's part of by placing the bid, they have had an opportunity to review that, and they are accepting the terms that are put forward in this. Okay. So they try to do it beforehand.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on that? Seeing none? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 3, review complaints on garbage rummage sales in the city. Ms. Nelson.
In about a within a 2-week period, I received, our office received 3 complaints on one particular address, 2 complaints on another address, just 1 complaint, that some people are having rummage sales, some on a daily basis, some Saturday and Sunday, every single weekend, all summer long. Their issues are bringing traffic into the areas. One of the residents, the garage is actually backed onto the alley, so everyone's going down the alley, which is bringing extra traffic, and I guess people will slow down and kind of look in other people's garages to see. So I guess, first of all, is this an issue you guys want to deal with? I did put in the RCA the 2 areas where their rummage sales or garage sales are referenced in our city code. One under secondhand license when it says occasionally sold by a household. I guess the other part of that is if we're going to look into this a little further and change the definitions, how are we going to enforce this? That's a big thing. And I guess one of the questions I had was, we do have a secondhand license, and if somebody's selling stuff on a daily basis, one of the things that our code does say is every Monday by noon, inventory is supposed to be handed in to the police department. I don't think that's done at this current time. So I would like to kind of look into our secondhand license. Kind of ties into this, but something to kind of consider as well. But is this something you guys want to dig into? Again, how would we redefine it, and how would we enforce it?
Mr. Paczynski.
Thank you. Reading through the Chapter 110, the word occasionally, I would say every weekend is more than occasionally, so they are abusing the complaints that we've gotten, are abusing the current code. And given what we're witnessing, we've got de facto thrift stores in residential areas, and I'm not okay with that. So whatever we need to do to clean that up or strengthen the code and then vigorously enforce that. If I had a garage sale of this size at next door to my house every weekend, it would come to an end fairly quickly, because that's not the deal you sign up for when you buy a house in a residential area. Thanks.
Mr. Tweeden.
I think that if the council on Saturday would drive up on 220 on the left-hand side of the highway north of Dahl's Funeral Home, there's a lot of activity there, and I don't know what's. I've looked at it a few times, but it doesn't beautify the city particularly. But I think everybody should drive and see it, and just what Mike's talking about, visualize it, and then you can see what the needs are, what we want to permit, and what we don't want to permit. Now, maybe the chief of police would like to make some comments too. I don't know.
Not this time.
Mayor?
I sure like some of the provisions in the one from Little Fork, Code of Ordinances, the following page. And you talk about enforcement, and some of these things would be a little hard to enforce, but the ones that would be not that hard to enforce, 4 times a year, and it does never run for more than 3 consecutive days, and then between the hours of 7 and 8 p.m., or excuse me, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those several provisions right there would just make it very straightforward. And of course, for discussion, anything else y'all wanted to do. But I think there would be a way to clean that up in a pretty straightforward fashion, just by bringing in some of those provisions.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, even on that though, even if don't fork, who is going to track the fork? Unless we start requiring people to have a permit to hold a garage sale, I just don't know how the tracking of when people have these is due.
I think what would have to happen is you'd wait till you had a complaint, and then you'd go out to the next 12 months. You couldn't do anything about the past ones, but if you're alerted to a problem, you'd start, and then someone would have to call each time, and yep, there it is again, there it is again.
I think what you would end up having to do, though, for enforcement purposes, is you would have to have them come in and request a permit for each garage sale so that it could be displayed, and then when the officers are driving by or whatever, they can see it. Otherwise, you can't track the number of sales that they have within that 1 year time frame.
And it could be a free permit. You wouldn't have to charge for it.
Whatever it would be, but it would have to be, you'd have to take the name, the address, and issue it, the issuance, and then the dates. I mean, it just becomes an administrative issue more than to be able to enforce it.
Makes sense.
I will say the sample ordinances that I received were for cities that were around 500 people.
Okay.
They were smaller cities.
Yeah.
So just to point that out.
Anybody else have any questions? I don't know, I think, if we do something, I think I agree with Mr. Gallstead. I think we need to have some kind of permit process to do it. You're not going to be able to track it. You're not going to be able to call Chief Hedlund and tell him to go out and do something unless we don't have proof. We have to document, no matter what you do. Could be this, could be something else. We have to have documentation that they have had more than 4, or they've had more than 5, whatever it may be.
And as a show of good faith to our citizens, we would not have to charge for that permit. It's not like a new money-making deal for the city that we're going to start doing this. That's just my 2 cents.
Just one follow-up. I did drive by one of these that we got the complaint on, and the amount of inventory was not your typical clean out the attic and the basement. It went from the curb to the back of the garage and a long driveway, and double the width of the driveway. Was a huge amount of furniture, clothes, everything. It was not a typical garage sale. This is someone who is running a thrift store, and there's, you can say permit this and permit that, but abuse when you see it. And I didn't take any pictures, but this was not a typical garage sale. It was someone running a business every weekend in a residential area, and that's not okay. Not with me.
Now, that amount of inventory would be understandable if it were an estate sale. Mother and dad passed away, we're cleaning out the house. I mean,
4 times the volume of merchandise than a typical estate and the size of the house that this was at.
So somewhere in there, some will be bigger than others.
I guess what is the wish is that you want to look into this further and have more discussion on it, or what do you want to do?
Could Megan and Mr. Gallstead pull together and come up with a recommendation that would limit it and also would be enforceable? Maybe Mr. Hedlund could be in on that too. Bring it forward.
I have no problem doing that. Megan and I have been discussing this briefly since she received the complaints, and she brought it forward because of the complaints. So
I think we all agree that we do want to set some practical parameters for folks.
Are we okay with that? That we're gone with that?
Yep.
If not, you can be on the committee.
I'll chill.
All right, thank you, Megan. Number 4, request to hire in Public Works Department, Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. So a little background, council authorized us to go ahead and advertise for hire for a couple vacancies within our wastewater stormwater division of Public Works. We filled one of those vacancies, and the second one is, I guess, why I'm here tonight. We selected Mr. Jeff Hansen to fill that position. And if approved, Mr. Hansen would be promoted from a truck driver position within Public Works to a wastewater/stormwater operator, in which case we'd have another vacancy within Public Works at the truck driver position to fill. So tonight I'm recommending that we hire Jeff Hansen as a wastewater/stormwater operator and ask for council's approval to go ahead and start the hiring process to fill the truck driver position as well.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Stordahl?
I do have one.
Mayor.
I was at Heritage Days this weekend, and Mr. Hansen's mother pulled me aside and wanted to tell me a story about Mr. Hansen. She told me how at the time of our big flood in '97 that he got involved in working for the city, and he loves this city, and he's contributed ever since, and he enjoys the work that he has done so far. And she said, so if you have anything to say about him getting this promotion to this next level, you got to know that, you know, in his heart, he loves this community and he really loves working for the city. And I mean, I couldn't get away. I was carrying like arms full of chairs, and she's following me through the grounds. But this is a young man, from what I can tell, especially coming from his mother, who has found a great niche, and I'm glad that we're being recommended for this advancement. That was a good story.
Yeah, it's good to hear. He's done an excellent job. He's actually been working within the department for the wastewater, stormwater division since about November of last year, working on the rank, and has done some really good things. So,
Thanks.
Anybody else have anything?
I think we should move it on.
Anybody else have anything at all? Not? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like
Hang on a
to,
second, Carla.
I'd like to say one thing.
Hang on a second, Henry.
Okay, I just want to let you know that Brianna and I have gone through the budget documents that Ron has there, and the 2014 and 15 data, somehow when we saved it and went to another one, is incorrect. And so we fixed the whole report. We're going to give you a whole new report. So if, I see Ron has, if you can give it back to me, I'll put the name on it. And then we will fill them up and give it tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll come with a new packet to your place of office, wherever you want it. And we'll have the whole packet, so just put the whole thing in, take everything else out, and we'll be good to go. And I will email you a new one. Is everybody able to open that Excel?
Yep.
And if you want, we can help you with that, if you want to open it, or if you just want paper, but you can give me a call on that. But if you, well, like I said, we'll have it in a packet for you. If you want to just take out the old, throw that out, and it'll be all new to go in. Yes, we'll be all ready to go in that 3-hole punch binder. Yes. Perfect. And if there's a place you want me to deliver it, or if you want to take it up, just let me know. Okay, thanks.
Henry.
I'd just like to make one comment. I was at the library yesterday during the eclipse, and Charlotte and her assistants did a tremendous job. And there were all kinds of people out in the parking lot with the glasses, but they piped it in. Corey was there, and there's people I've never seen before, but it was very educational for a lot of younger people. Their mothers were there and their dads, and I think that she and Corey and her staff should be complimented for what they did. It's another thing that shows that the people in the library are on the ball. They're performing very well. And the exponent was there taking pictures, and that'll be in the paper tomorrow. Maybe, Charlotte, you got any comments you'd like to make?
It was a great event.
Okay. Thank
Nothing
you.
else.
Thank you, sir. Just a reminder, we'll do a budget meeting the 24th, and then our next meeting is not till September 5th. So we know that. So, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Moved by Tweed and second by Ponchavinsky. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Meeting is adjourned.